right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I have a very special guest with me here today. He was on my channel back in May of 2023. So it's been a while. Since then, he has had a lot of stuff happen in his life. One of those things was that he started his own YouTube channel, which just passed 1,000 subscribers, I think, a week ago. So congratulations.
1.5K.
Got to correct me. 1.5K. We got to get the numbers right. Amir, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. You know, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I really have to make a good use of it before you become too big to concern yourself with like nobodies like me, you know? So I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's enough. That's enough. This is going to be a more casual conversation for everyone listening, but Amir is one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to valuation. He just put out a video yesterday. It's about 30 minutes long. I'll link it in the description. And it's one of the best Palantir evaluation videos I've seen in my entire life. If you just go through the comments in those videos, the amount of people that are just like happy to have someone really break down the numbers, it's pretty special. And in a world in which a lot of people are starting to talk about Palantir, I think that's where Amir differentiates himself. So let's actually start off with that question, because Amir, you posted a screenshot of someone saying, I love listening to your analysis, but I fall asleep while listening to it. You're a new creator. This was it wasn't a hate comment, but it was one of those like little snarky comments. How did you deal with that for the first time?
No, I've done, I think maybe like 25 videos by now, and I get a lot of comments, surprisingly. Like, I was really shocked that I grew to 1.5K this quickly, and I get a bunch of comments. This is the first negative comments I've ever received. And he's like, yeah, man, great stuff. Amazing content, but I fall asleep listening to you. I'm like, is it me? And you know that you have it good when that is like your first hate comment, you know. But no, I totally understand. Not everyone is suited for my content. It's very, very different from anything that I know. It's not focused on covering the latest news or a bunch of stocks like surface level. Like, we really just sit 30, 40, 50, up to an hour just looking at an Excel sheet. And I understand that's not for everyone, but it seems to be filling some sort of void because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of comments, a lot of people engaging with it. I tried like listening to your advice, like, no, man, keep it 10 to 15 minutes. So I tried to do that. And the first comment was, bring back the 1 hour videos. I'm like, come on.
So you have the conflicting comments now, right? Which is another part of the whole being a creator. Some people say this, some people say this.
Yeah, it's been great fun and a challenge.
But it's also really cool, right? When you were little, you have a small community of people that are posting, hey, we love you, awesome stuff. You get a little bigger, which 1.5 is not that different from 1,000. And boom, someone snarky. Because I don't think that person had any ill intention. But the fact that they took time out of their day to say you're boring when I listen to you, even though I love your analysis, like, it just goes to show you there's really, I would say, tens of millions of people like that person that are willing to put out a little bit of negativity for whatever reason, you know? And it's something that you as a creator have to deal with and be able to navigate.
Yeah, it's I'm used to that from X now. You know, whenever you used to post about PayPal on X back in the day, like, not now so much as the stock has risen, as always. Like, when the stock is in the dumpster, it really brings out the worst in people. So whenever you post about PayPal, it's only hate. So like, I'm used to dealing with it. And if it's like a well thought out, thoughtful, well grounded comment, I'm like, okay, man, I'll listen to what you have to say. I'll learn. I'll become better, of course. When it's like just a surface level, like, F you, I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine too. Like, it doesn't get to me. Like, I don't get upset at negative comments. So please, if you have feedback to share, go ahead.
Why have you started making Palantir content? I know you have other topics you talk about, but why did you start the YouTube channel?
Okay, so this is gonna sound like total BS to some, but I don't even consider myself a content creator. And we have talked about this. You're totally a content creator, but the way I view it is, I really like Professor Aswathamodran in terms of, he's like the world-class teaching valuations. And one of the things he said, and he does this himself, like, he does what he preaches. He puts out every valuation he does, like, it's out there. You can go download his Excels. He's like, you don't even have to credit me. Use whatever you want. I just want to put it out there because when you expose yourself, that's really when you learn. When you get pushback, when you get feedback, and when people call you out on, like, you missed this, or oh, I think you're wrong here, and here's why. Like, that's a part of the learning. And I've done
Right.
that on X initially. I started posting analysis on X, got a lot of comments, learned a lot, got to meet people like you, like Arnie. I've talked to like billion-dollar company CEOs. So X is amazing of a platform. And then I just branched out on YouTube, because that's just another avenue where you can reach new audiences, get new opinions, new uh, sources of feedback. So it's mainly just to improve myself. I don't care about making money. I don't care about reaching the highest amount of viewers, because if I did that, I would just like clickbait every comment, have my shocked face in every thumbnail, and you know how to reach people. But that's not my thing. And you sometimes get frustrated with me because I'm not being a YouTuber correctly, I guess. I could reach a lot more people and be a lot better if I just change my content. But I don't know, it's difficult for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I think I take a lot of pride in being authentic. So there's a certain type of clickbait. There's a clickbait where you are completely misleading and lying to an audience and you get them into your ecosystem. There's another type of clickbait where you just reword the title to make it a little bit more interesting, but when they click, you
Yeah.
deliver on that. And I think that's what I've tried to be in. I think that's what you're trying to be in as well. But the point is, if you don't care about doing that, then you just don't do it and you give the raw details. I mean, Aswath still gets 20, 30,000 views a video just by being like valuation 101. Right, and people click because they care about
Yeah.
him more than the title.
Yeah, and there's also like a second layer to it, because if my content doesn't reach people, then I'm not getting that feedback that I want to get in order to improve myself. So like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, well, you need to make it appear interesting. Hopefully it also is interesting, the content. Judging by the comments I get, like, some people really do enjoy it, so that's great. But yeah, I need to improve my titles for sure, my thumbnails, and you're a great source of inspiration in that, because I think you're doing an amazing job.
Okay, this is my interview. Don't just flower me with compliments every time you end your answer. Okay, so we're done with that.
Sure.
Next. Why did you invest in Palantir at $7? And how did you go all in? How did you have the wherewithal? How did you have the brilliance, giving you the compliments now, to actually make that investment and go all in? No, seriously, dude, you did something most of the world didn't do. That makes you very special. And in investing when no one cares into something that can 5x is a special thing. So how did
Look,
you
the
do
the
that?
the simple answer is just patience. Because I've been following the company since before the DPO. I saw some rumblings a bunch of years ago about software. I read about all their achievements, but it was still kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I put it in the back of my mind. When they did the DPO, I found it like, okay, I really like this sort of business. I like the story that's developing here, but it's way overvalued. So I just kept track of the company, and I do this with a lot of companies that I identify as high quality companies. I just track them, and when I see opportunities, I just buy. Like, it's not that difficult. I really don't get affected by FOMO. I don't track stock prices daily. I mean, I don't watch my portfolio, so I really don't have any emotions to my investing. So it's just simple, like patience. And I can tell you later on about a different example here. But as for Palantir, I was just patient. I watched the story develop. I saw the operating margins increasing. I saw that they really had no capital expenditures to speak of. They really have low reinvestment to achieve high quality revenue. I saw that their R&D was static, like it was flat, but they kept innovating like I saw no other SaaS business doing. So I was like, okay, there's something special here, but I want to pay the right price for what I'm getting. So I was just patient, and it dropped below 10, and then I just went all in. I'm like, okay, opportunities like this are rare. I'm comfortable liquidating everything and going 100% Palantir. So I did when it was around $6.
And did you have any fear when you
No,
did this? You
no.
had zero hesitation.
As I said, I don't use emotions at all. Like, I don't even like. I went all in, and then I just waited a couple of, like, 1 quarter, two quarters. The stock was at like 18, and then I started trimming when I did a new valuation. At the time, my valuation fair price was around $12-13, and the stock was 18-20. So I was like, okay, time to trim some, and then I divested some, but I was still like heavily, and I still am heavily into Palantir. but no, like no emotions. And I think that's really hard for people to like imagine. Like, I don't think a lot of people invest this way, but I think like I have no issue sleeping, because when I do make a decision, I believe that it's very informed, in accordance to my investment style, my investment philosophy. So I really never like stress about it. Like, I do a lot of work, I put in a lot of hours so that I don't have to stress over it, so that I can sleep well at night.
That's one of the things I like about you. Like when you, like you and Arnie in particular, when you say a name, it's not because you looked at it for 2 minutes. It's like if you mention a name like PayPal, which you started mentioning at $49, $52, whatever, it's because you've really done the work, and there's always a risk, but you do think there's something special. So walk me through the process when it was $6. What was the work you were doing to reinforce the thesis that allowed you to keep investing in Palantir?
It's been a while now, and I've really become better as an investor. But I think in general, broad strokes, the approach was the same. It's much more sophisticated now, because like every year that passes, I just become better. Especially since I met Arnie, his experience has really like accelerated my own understanding of these things. But the process was similar, where I identify. Can you just rephrase, like, ask the
Yeah.
question again, so I
What
answer
did you?
correctly?
Yeah. What stuff did you study slash do in terms of due diligence when Palantir
Yeah.
was
Okay. So,
$6?
so, so valuations are about telling a story, right? So all you need to take all your knowledge about the company in order to be able to tell the story of the company. And the problem with Palantir is that it's really at something like a chapter 3 out of a 35 chapter book. So the story could go which way. So you really need to dig deep to try to understand, like, okay, how's this story gonna develop? What's the main character gonna do? Like, what's building up to the climax? Like, you really need to be able to tell this. And the numbers, like the actual numbers that you put into the model, they're just a reflection of the story that you're telling. So all the time I put in is trying to understand, okay, where is this company heading? And then I use numbers to tell the story. And it's all about tracking the company, the news. Like, as you know, you've been tracking this company for long. It's never a boring day when you when you track Palantir. There's like new deals several times per week. They did Foundry cons back in the day. Now they do AIP cons. You hear about partners talking about the company. Like, there's so much information to digest. So it was like never boring. So it was just a gradual process of understanding the business more and more over time. And that allowed me to, I believe, become more accurate with my own valuations of the company. So that's really where the brunt of the hours went into, just trying to understand where the story is heading.
So at 6-7, you thought valuation made sense. What was
Well,
the?
it was before I started buying it. Some like when it started dropping in 2022. I don't recall the exact prices, but it went from being above like 20 for a while in 21, start of 22. Then it went down slowly towards that 6. I started buying around 11, 10, and I went all in at 7. So that part is correct.
So when the valuation made sense, what was the thesis? Like, why'd you invest outside of valuation?
Because when I value Palantir, there are two components to the business. And this is important to never generalize. Like, if you want to do valuations, don't just, what is the term called? Like, run a comb through the hair. No, I don't know. You know, when you just put everything like under a
But you put
blanket
everything
and
in a
cover.
bucket. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did was I split the businesses, because we have the government side of things, which with completely different margin profiles, growth profiles than the consumer-facing business. And at the time, I realized that, okay, I am paying at this price. I am paying for the consumer business. I get the whole of the government for free. So I
Right.
was like, oh my God, when I realized that. And that's when I felt comfortable going all in. So that was
Oh,
the major revelation.
okay. Now, in terms of like the actual software, we didn't have access to that back in 2022. Now we have some access to it. Did you understand Foundry and the ontology, or you just thought like it was valuable and it was undervalued?
not even close to the degree that we understand it as a collective today, due to the work of a lot of people in this community. I have to say, this community is really something special. We have everything from engineers to former analysts to people like undercover, like finding contracts that they are signing with the government, posting it every day. Like, we really have eyes everywhere. So it's
Yeah.
really like a Palantir in a sense. I know you haven't watched the movies, and I really want everyone that's watching this video now to know that Amit has not watched The Lord of the Rings. I want everyone to spam him daily until he watches them, and he has to put his phone away, because I know he's kind of person. He's gonna be like this on his phone like the whole movie, and that's not the way to
Dude, I'm
experience
not
The
gonna
Lord of the
lie.
Rings.
I tried the other day. It was on Amazon Prime. It was like Saturday night. I tried, and then TikTok was calling my name, and Instagram was calling
Yeah,
my
I know
name.
it's like the new generation. Like, you need that
Okay, but
instant.
you spend a lot of time on TikTok too, so don't act like you don't enjoy
Okay.
my little
Where
videos.
were we? We were talking about Palantir somewhere.
Yeah, so let's transition to this question. Now that you understand Foundry a lot more, what is
Yeah.
your understanding of the potential of this software?
It's still, I still feel like I only understand like something like 20-30%. I understand the numbers that they're producing. I understand that when they do boot camps, I understand the sales efficiency. I can measure that with numbers. I can compare it to other people in the same industry, in the SaaS world. I can see that they are way more efficient in acquiring what I consider to be high quality revenue and cash flows than other businesses in the SaaS world. But when it comes to like all the engineering stuff, I have to take the word of someone like Coldstrap and try
Right.
to understand it. Like, when we covered the Q2 earnings together, and we heard about warp speed, and like, okay, this is an ERP system. I'm like, the hell is an ERP system? Like, I can't grasp it until I can see it like with my own eyes, and I need it explained to me. Even though I like, this is kind of embarrassing, but I do work in IT, like in tech, but I don't know an ERP system. For example, Apollo, to this day, I use deployment software at my work. I can't tell you what Apollo does so much better than every other alternative out there. So there's still like, I still feel like there's so much to uncover in understanding the software at a granular level.
Right.
But I would still say that I understand all the core principles of what Palantir is able to achieve that other companies are not, through just studying the company daily. But I have to say, I'm more focused on the numbers side of the business than understanding like all the engineering stuff. And we do have a lot of talent in this community to break that down for us mortals, if you if you would call it.
No, I agree. And that's what I love about this community as well. Like, if you're hyper focused on the numbers and CodeStrap's hyper focused on the tech, if we can just trust him when he says the tech is good, then we can not have to focus on it. It just saves people so much time to have to validate parts of the thesis, right?
Yeah, and I would even say like, just trust him is the wrong word. He breaks it down in an easily digestible way where you can understand it and you can trust yourself. Like,
Right. Right.
the point is to make yourself understand it. Like, when I make a valuation video, someone commented like, well, you made a Q2 earnings preview and you were totally correct, which I predicted like the high acceleration in revenue growth because the comp, and I did a whole video on that. He's like, I didn't trust you back then, but I trust you now. I'm going all in with you. I'm like, no, that's the whole wrong approach. I'm just showing you how I think about things so that you can reason and find your own way through this. Like, the point isn't to trust someone blindly. The point is to try to learn and understand as much as yourself and trust yourself. So I think that's what you meant. So, but I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I meant. And I think it makes a lot of sense having that community come together to be able to do this. What are your opinions on Alex Karp? And do you think he's the right person to lead Palantir?
This used to be such a controversial topic. Back in the day, people were really opposed to Karp. People were really calling for him to leave the company, give it to Shyam. Some people didn't like Shyam. They wanted someone else to come and take over. I've always been a Karp supporter. And if you go back now, for anyone listening to this, go and listen to his old CNBC interviews. And go and listen whenever he was on Bloomberg or whenever he talks to investors, like his earnings calls. basically everything that he's been saying, both about the company itself, the trajectory of the business, and even like world events, has more or less come to pass, which is super impressive. I always liked Karp. I liked his approach, and I would say he's similar to me in that I don't think he understands the business on such a granular level. He understands the concepts and the philosophies of the business he's running. And that's why, just like we need CodeStrap, you need someone like Shiem that can really understand the engineering stuff. And he's more philosophical. People don't really like that. Some people
Do you
love
do
it,
you do
like
you
you
do
and
you
me.
do you do you like the why do you like the philosophical stuff?
I don't know. Like in his letters, I wouldn't say that I'm the biggest fan of the ramblings. I have a hard time because I've never like really cared about philosophy throughout my life. So when he gives you a hypothetical, or like that's the wrong word, I don't know the English word for it, but when he references something and you don't really get it, like that's me. So I'm more like, okay, what is he actually trying to say? And I can support
But
that.
so
But
basically, when he's like, when we strive to the axiomatic truths of an
yeah,
understanding
I'm
of
like,
the
Mac,
world.
come on, man. Like I haven't watched enough daily words with Amit to
No, but
understand all this stuff.
that speaks to my soul because I studied philosophy. But I can understand
Yeah,
how
I know.
someone who doesn't give a shit about philosophy, you're like, all right, is the business doing good or not? Like, what, you know?
Yeah, and he always it's not for nothing. Like he doesn't just ramble for rambling's sake. Like underneath that, there is a message, and once we decode that, that's when we really start to understand what he really thinks. So I like that part. As for the use of extravagant words that I'm probably never gonna come across ever again in my life, I don't know. It's, it's not for me, but you have to take the good with the bad, as with any CEO.
Do you think he is too eccentric on mainstream media when he says, like it's the size of the product that matters? I'm batshit crazy. And do you think that is good for his long-term trajectory in terms of the relationship with the mainstream media, or do you think there's a negative there?
I think they're coming around to it. The narrative around Palantir has really shifted, and with that, also the opinion of Alex Karp. He's correct when he says that people think of him as batshit crazy. When he says that, like he really means it, because that's the perception people generally have when they see someone with this crazy hair, philosophical, dyslexic, like ADHD, like he can't sit still. He sits like a monkey on a chair, and he comes across like that. But beneath that, there is a brilliant man, and people are starting to see that as the results of the business are ramping up. So I think like it's charming in a way. I think mainstream media has really come around to Karp. Yeah, no, I think in general it's the correct approach for the business. The business is very, like it or not, it's very controversial in a sense because of their values. And if you align with those, you're really going to love Palantir. A lot of people, including past employees, they don't really agree with it and they're gone. But if you can stand behind the message of the business and align with their values, then yeah, he's totally the correct person to lead the company. And I don't believe it hurts the company at all. I think he's a perfect fit in a sense.
How do you feel about the ethics of the business? Have you spent time thinking about it, or is it something that's less of your concerns?
You know, as of recent times, I've come to, I'm not really politically active myself. So I don't know. I don't have any problems with the ICE stuff. That's like the major thing
Yep.
historically.
Yep.
I don't have any issues with supporting the West unconditionally. Uh, no, I don't have any issues with it. The past me from like 10 years ago, when I was a lot younger and more gullible, I might have had an issue with it. But like in recent times, you have to agree with me that it's really becoming evidently more blatant that mainstream media as a whole is really all about misleading people. Like that's the general impression you get. And I think like X has really made me realize a lot of that stuff. So I'm like more skeptical in general now. But yeah, no, I don't have any issue with that these days.
Yeah, when I deep dived into like the ethical issues a couple years ago, I found that civil liberties is something they care about more than every other company in the world. And so, yes, there are some gray areas, but the actual protection of people's rights and the government not infringing on them, that's something they strive for, and that's all you can ask out of a company at the day. But at
And
the end of
you
the
know, they really hold a standard still. There were some countries actually that are Western allies that plan to use their software for monitoring their citizens, and Palantir pulled out. They said no to the revenue, just like they say no to, like, I can't even imagine the revenue they would get from something like a Russia or China if they offer the software there. But they're like, no, we have values and they're really important to us. So we're not going to sell our software for you to spy on your citizens, even though you're a Western ally. So they really draw the line somewhere. And I think that's really respectable in a
yeah.
sense. So, yeah.
What do you think about AIP Bootcamps? For 2 years, Palantir didn't know how to sell their product, and then out of nowhere, they have this revolutionary go-to-market. What do you think about the future of that of that approach to sales, and do you think it can carry them over the next decade?
I think it was, when I valued the business, I saw a story developing where they would return to something like a 30% CAGR, like Alex Karp initially promised us. But if you look at the business, they really didn't have a growth lever to pull in order to achieve that 30% before
Right.
AIP.
Right.
So I was valuing the business to find a way to start growing closer to 30% again. And that fate was really rewarded because they really found a way. Just like, Aswat the Modern talks about this for NVIDIA, for example, like he knows that NVIDIA will be there regardless of what the next revolution will be. They were there for gaming, they were there for crypto, they're here now for AI. Like somehow, like if you're lucky once, sure, twice, by the third time, it's not luck anymore. Great, high quality business find a way to be ahead of the game, and I think that applies to Palantir as well. Like I knew that they would find a way. I couldn't tell you like, okay, I'm predicting them to do these boot camps where they can really scale efficiently, because one, the biggest problem of Palantir was they had no way of really getting people to try the software, get it in the hands of people, because whoever tried the software could like easily recognize like, oh my god, we
It's amazing.
we can do so much with the software, but they really had no way of doing that. So bootcamps really solved that issue, and the way they've been scaling bootcamps is really impressive. So if we take a year, like it launched by the start of Q2 last year, I think like for every quarter that's passed, they really like doubled the amount of bootcamps of the previous quarter. So let's say that by Q4 of 2023, just before we went into 2024, I think they reported something like 300 boot camps in that quarter. By Q1, just a quarter later, they had ran 600 boot camps that quarter. And by the previous boot camp, AIP Con, they announced we have ran like 1,200 boot camps in Q2. So they're really like been doubling and doubling and doubling. It's like, oh my God, like when does this, how long can you keep scaling like this? Is it infinite? Is it like, is there some ceiling? And they really solved that too, because now we hear reports of Palantir clients, Palantir partners, consultancies running boot camps on their behalf. So they don't really have to be there to run them themselves with their own staff. They have partners doing them as well. So it can really scale for a lot longer than what we're seeing right now. And I think it's really one of the most efficient ways to sell their software, because you solve the biggest issue you had historically, which is just get the software in the hands of people. And people are saying like, oh my God, there's so many efficiencies. And when you do that, Palantir has such a powerful network effect. The more people that use it, the more use cases you solve. And the more use cases you solve, the more industries you can target, and the more widely available the market can be, and the more valuable it can be to different businesses across the world in every industry. Like they do everything from hospital beds to like aviation to race cars to logistics to factory floors. Like they target everything. And that's what's really exciting about the business. So I think bootcamps was a stroke of genius, whoever came up with them.
Do you think that the question I'm trying to get through, it comes from boot camps. Do you think the boot camps will lead us to the NVIDIA quarter, 50, 60% growth? Like, when do you think that quarter is coming, if you think that quarter is coming?
I think that quarter is coming even if they stop the boot camps tomorrow.
Why?
Because they're not properly charging for boot camps yet. I mean, for new customers acquired through boot camps. And we know that they have... I don't know, we don't have details yet, and this is one of the biggest issues with Palantir for someone like me, is that they are really secretive about their different segments, conversion rates and stuff like that. But we know that they have turned to something like a usage-based, like a consumption-based pricing model, where they used to have this big problem where they would sell Foundry, which was like this huge stack of software, and like companies, businesses trying to solve this small use case, it was a total waste. Like, okay, we solved the use case, but we're paying for a software that's this big. Like, what do we do with the rest of it? So they tried to solve that through creating modules. Like, you don't have to buy the whole Foundry stack, you could just buy the parts that you need. And now with AIP now, and AIP in general, you can really target these like small use cases. And if we go back to AIP Con, that was just a few weeks ago, I think close to 80% of the people presenting on stage said, we are looking to expand our partnership with Palantir. And we know that historically that's been their sales strategy, is we just want to get through the door at cost. Like, they will pay to like you for you to run demos, they will help you set it up. Then they have the that's called the acquire phase, and then they have the expand phase, where okay, the demo worked well, now we're starting to target more stuff within the business, trying to solve more use cases, create more efficiencies, and then you come to the scale phase. And while that might have died with the new pricing models that Palantir has, I still think that a lot of the new acquired customers through bootcamps are just looking to scale up their use of Palantir. And with time, Palantir can really start to charge for that as well. Because do you recall that they said when AIP just came out, like, we don't have a pricing strategy. We're just going after market share. We're just going to take the whole market. I think he even mentioned the F word somewhere in there. Karp.
It was a pretty badass statement.
Yeah, and they've done exactly that. So I don't think they're properly charging for AIP yet, and I think that's to come. So yes, I do believe your short question had a long answer, but yes, I do believe the NVIDIA quarter is coming, and I do believe that they can achieve a 40% quarter even without doing any more bootcamps from this point on, just from the scale up of existing ones.
So, all right, if you think the NVIDIA's quarter is coming, what vertical do you think the NVIDIA quarter is going to come out of? Is it going to be healthcare, defense, energy? Do you have any thoughts on a vertical they can expand into?
Well, the cop-out answer is to say the government. But it's true, they're becoming more or less essential to various industries. Most recently, we've heard about the healthcare part of the business, where they really target, like, every time I hear a quote of how many beds they power in the US, the percentage just keeps increasing. We're like a fourth of all beds in the US are like powered by Palantir. And now it's not only beds, like they even use the software to like write back to insurance companies that have denied an insurance claim. Like, they're really expanding the use cases all over. So I would say healthcare for sure. It's like the major one right now. But yeah, the true answer is the government, probably.
Yeah, I agree. It's government and healthcare, and there's probably some other verticals we're not really thinking of, like American manufacturing, which is where Warp Speed comes in. But
yeah, they target everything. Like, we now have a strike at the docks, and I saw Ted Mowbray being active on X, like, okay, we can solve this for you in less than 24 hours. Contact me. Yeah. Like, they just target everything. Yeah, amazing.
What is your approach to finding the next Palantir? How do
I
you do the research necessary to find the next super undervalued asymmetric mafia boss company?
read a lot is the boring answer, but the true answer. So you get some ideas through social media for sure. Like you see a lot of these hyped stocks, but I can quickly identify if this company is something that could remotely interest me or not. So I can really filter out just based on what the business is doing, because my investment philosophy is really centered around finding these what I call mafia companies. And that's a term me and Arnie coined when we were discussing the type of businesses that we like. And it's essentially about identifying high quality businesses with an oppressive and exploitative quality to them, just like the real life Cosa Nostra back in the day, hence the term mafia. It's all about finding businesses with like a high barrier to entry, with low risk of it being disrupted. We're talking phenomenal operating margins, high quality, reliable, and predictable free cash flow, typically with low reinvestment required to grow that. And now, if you stop at that point, you can just say, well, that's just like every other person. Like everyone's looking for high quality businesses. What you described is just like, finding a good company. But the thing that separates this as a mafia, in addition to those qualities, is business models that don't have to cater to the whims of others. Basically, the whims of others, meaning consumers or having an industry leader, completely detached from trend chasing. Most
Right.
most consumer facing businesses are all about chasing a trend, and they're really fickle and susceptible to consumer trends. Like this famous person that I love just switched to this brand, so I'm just gonna follow, and then a company just dies. So there are a
Right.
lot of stuff like that, not only like based on consumer behavior, but it could be regulation related. It could be related to, as I mentioned, an industry leader setting the trend. So this kind of company is completely detached from that. They don't care. They are, if anything, they are the trendsetters. And all those businesses, once in a blue moon, when I identify one, they all just happen to have the same major problem attached to them. So if we have time, I can give you a short example of
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean there. So
100%.
I made a video recently on FICO, and that's a typical example of what I mean by mafia. So, just a short rundown. They have 90% operating margins in the consumer credit scores business. Like most people listening to this from the US are familiar with a FICO and FICO score. And it's basically a fortress. But at the end of the day, all that the FICO business model is, it's a mathematical model. And the business is set up in a way where they can comfortably double, triple, or even 5 or 10x what they charge for that model, and no one would care. Doesn't that just sound like fantastical? Like, can you even imagine like 5xing what you charge for that model and no one even notices or cares? And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, they just sell the mathematical model that makes up the FICO score. They don't care about the consumer data. So what happens is the end consumer contacts a lender. The lender sets a credit risk report request to a credit bureau. The credit bureau buys the model from FICO. It goes back to them, then to the lender, and then to the consumer. And a FICO score costs less than $1 to issue. And
Right.
who do you think pays for that? Do you think the credit bureau pays for that? No. Do you
No.
think the lender pays for it? No. By the end of the day, when you take out the credit, like of the sizes that we're talking, like let's say a mortgage or wherever else, like that you would need credit for, the end consumer ends up paying for it. It's just a line item at the end of the, like, because you crop the camera. I've been doing like Italian hand gestures, but yeah. So when it costs less than $1 for the FICO score, and you are taking out like 500,000 up to 5 million, do you really care if that's $1 or $5 added to the tally? No, you don't care. when it's about those amounts. And the credit bureau doesn't care. They often add their own like 100% operating margins on top of that. The lender doesn't care. They just forward it to the consumer, who is happy to pay for it, because in the grand scheme of things, it's like non-meaningful to pay less than $1. So FICO could 5x or 10x and no one would care. So where's the issue that I talked about? Whenever I identify one of these, they always have the same issue. So the issue is, if I take my intrinsic valuation of FICO, where I look at what is the fair value per share of the business, for FICO, if I double that, it's still overvalued.
Mm.
And that's the issue with all of these mafia companies. Let's say FICO, let's say S&P Global, Moody's, all these kind of businesses that are really oppressive and mafia in nature, they all have the same issue, that they're always more or less overvalued. And to solve that, you just need patience. And my patience runs through my entire lifetime. So as with Palantir, I will just keep track of the story, the business, trying to understand more and more. Sooner or later, as with Palantir, I will get an opportunity and I will take that. Just like with Tesla, I've known Tesla for 15 years. I didn't buy Tesla until recently when it was close to $100, because that's when I identified, okay, here's my opportunity. I was fine being patient. And some people are like, well, you could have just bought and rode up with the stock. Like, yeah, you could, but I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't be able to sleep. Like, as we talked about earlier, the only reason that I can be comfortable holding something very concentrated is because it's in accordance to my investment philosophy. So
yeah, and I think that's very special, dude, because like investing in individual stocks sounds fun and it's cool, but if you can't sleep at night and if you don't really have the conviction that, hey, I've done enough of my own due diligence in this company where my family's future is protected, then you might as well just go to an index and like sleep at night. So having that ability to actually be confident in yourself, that's a special trait, and it's a hard trait to develop.
Yeah, and now I do have a daughter, I have a wife, so I really need to be careful. Like, it's not only about me. If I was in my early 20s, like I'm only 30 now only, but if I was like 19, 20, I imagine myself being a lot more reckless. I imagine myself going on margin, doing options. I'm like, well, I can just get that capital back by working like a few months, whatever, you know.
Right.
Especially like if you live at home, like all that paycheck just goes straight into like your gambling account, or no, your brokerage account. Like, it's easy to replenish that, and you're a lot more prone to taking risk. But yeah, I have to be very careful now that it's not only my life that's being affected here.
NVIDIA is the hardware infrastructure for AI. Do you believe the value is in the hardware or in the software stack?
Well, the answer to the question is the software stack, but I think it's what is it called when you do something in tandem, like when you know,
simultaneously when you're
no, like when they're both beneficial to each other.
It's yeah, they're mutually beneficial.
Yeah. Like
they feed off each other.
You need both, and we're starting to see that, especially like if we're talking hardware. Let's take Palantir as the software example, because we both, I believe, we both see Palantir as the winner in the software race. That's why we're so heavily invested in Palantir. But let's take the software side. Let's take NVIDIA. So they need to sell their chips to these hyperscalers. That's what's going on right now. These hyperscalers are really racing to Jensen, like who can buy the most chips, who can build out the largest AI centers of hardware. And the problem then becomes, okay, we have this whole infrastructure. What do we do with this? So you need your clients, like the hyperscalers need their clients to actually make use of that compute. Else you've just wasted all this capex for nothing because it's not being used.
Right.
So what they do is, and we saw, we're seeing evidence of this. For example, the Microsoft CEO during their earnings calls, he went on like, yeah, we are partnering with industry leaders like Palantir, specifically mentions Palantir. And why does he do that? Like, this is a prepared remark. Like, this is not just on a whim. Like, this is during an earning call. He specifically calls out names of different companies, and it's for a reason, because he wants to push their clients somewhere where they will need all the compute, and all the hyperscalers will do the same. They will push their clients, for example, to Palantir. I'm sure there are others being mentioned in the same conversation, but with Microsoft, we specifically had Palantir because they know that if they use Palantir, they're going to need compute. It's not going to be some vaporware software where they're like, we're not getting anything out of this, whatever. We don't need this AI thing. It's useless. Let's just go back to how it was. And then the CapEx at the hyperscalers is wasted. We're seeing Amazon partner up with Palantir, Google, Microsoft. Like, who aren't they partnered with? They all want to push their clients to software solutions where the compute can be used. And Palantir is an obvious beneficiary of that, because they actually have solutions that do bring efficiencies and software that works, which is the slogan for Palantir. It's just software that works. So I think the largest beneficiary will be the software companies, just for that reason, because CapEx at the end of the day has a ceiling. Manufacturing at the end of the day has a ceiling. So I don't think the hyperscalers are going to be the big AI winners. They might be winners in the sense that they will do incredibly well. But the true winner of the AI race will be software companies, because it's basically infinite how much they can scale. It's not infinite how much GPUs that NVIDIA can sell, because at the end of the day, someone has to pay for all that CapEx. And you need to see ROI on that. You need to refresh. It needs to make sense to refresh that CapEx spend. So I think NVIDIA has a ceiling. I think hyperscalers technically don't have that sort of ceiling, but they are pushing volumes to the software stacks. And I think at the end of the day, Palantir will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this whole AI race. And that's why I'm investing in Palantir, one of the main reasons. But yeah, I think I covered my main points there. I'm gonna watch this interview back, and I'm gonna, why didn't I mention that? That always happens, like, but yeah.
Oh, dude, I mean, in a world in which lots of people now want to start talking about Palantir, like, there's very few people that can actually do it, and you're one of the elite minds that knows how to talk about investing in Palantir. I mean, I learned so much from you. One question for you as well. This will be last couple questions. SPACs. So our first interview, you had a theory on SPACs that I never thought of before. Why do you think it was good for Palantir to have invested in the SPACs?
The SPAC story was really misunderstood, and I still believe that to this day. And even though Palantir said that they really don't care about SPACs, they still invested after that interview. I can't remember if it was CNBC or Yahoo Finance or whatever. But basically, what people thought, like, oh my God, Palantir made investments in companies in all these SPACs. The SPAC bubble burst, and they lost all this money. Like, whose stupid idea was this? I mean, during this period, Shyam changed his title. Do you remember that? To CTO? And people are like, oh my God, this was Shyam's idea. He's being demoted for this stupid idea. I'm like, what are people talking about? Like, if you read their filings, their SEC filings, it's abundantly clear that they have one specific goal, and that's to become the operating system of various industries. And they are targeting a lot of vast industries. So what I did was, okay, how do they want to do that? And at the time, they're really focused on having what they called forward deployed engineers, which they called being at the battlefield, most recently in the AIP Conf5. Like, they are at the forefront, they are solving issues at the point of contact with the customers. So they deploy these engineers, understand what kind of challenges each industry has, they resolve that. And once you solve one use case, that use case can be resold to different businesses facing the same issue within the same industry. So really, it was about getting all this industry specific information, finding out, okay, what kind of issues are you facing at a typical say logistics company or a factory or whatever it was. And once they resolved that, like for example, we know that they were part of like automation companies. They had like even something like scooters. Well, I believe that one might have been straight up stupid. But yeah, like they were like if you look at the SPACs, no two SPACs were alike. These were vastly different, covering vastly different industries and sectors. Like the business range was immense. So what I did was I went onto Palantir's website and they have this page. I don't know if they still have it, but back in the day, they had this page called offerings, where it's like, okay, we operate in these industries. And there was a long, I'm going to use this hand there. This was a long list of various offerings they have targeting like crypto, health, bank, financial, automotive, logistics, whatever. So I looked at the SPACs like, okay, what do these SPACs do? And then I started to draw lines.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how does this benefit Palantir's offerings? So basically, the way I saw it was, this was free battlefield R&D. And that's not the only part. Like, okay, you can view this as free R&D. At the time, it was a huge boost to the revenues as well. And that's why people said, well, Palantir is buying revenue. And that's true in a sense. Basically, for people that aren't familiar, when Palantir made an investment in a SPAC, the SPAC had to agree to sign up for a contract with Palantir.
That's what the fishy stuff people thought about this whole SPACs thing was.
Yeah. So that's also one of the main issues that people had with this. And that's why they said, well, Palantir is buying revenue. So these companies signed up for exorbitant amounts. Like when I looked at it, a SPAC paid something like 3 times the average contract that Palantir had for consumer clients. Like they were being charged a lot of money. And the thing was, Palantir just had to invest in them. Then they got this R&D. They got this revenue from the businesses. Like they signed up on average for 3 to 5 years. The contract size was like 3 to 5 times as much as a regular not consumer like commercial contract. And the magical part was Palantir didn't need to stay invested. They could sell the equity like the same day they signed it. And that's what Palantir ended up doing. They ended up selling all their investments for a couple of quarters now. They don't hold any equity, but they're still receiving a lot of revenue from those contracts 2 years ago. As long as the businesses don't go bankrupt, which unfortunately a lot of them did go bankrupt, but Palantir still made back their whole initial investment the way I calculated it. So I calculated
which was about 240 million, something like that, right?
No, something like 450 million in total cumulatively. So I looked at, okay, what equity are they being granted? At what price did they sell at? How much revenue are they getting? So I've been tracking this on a quarterly basis until Palantir made all their money back. And then you say, okay, how much is that R&D worth? And my reasoning was like Palantir really made out like bandits here. Like they got back all their money. They got all this free R&D across various vastly different businesses. So yeah, the SPAC idea was genius. I don't understand the criticism towards SPACs. Like at surface level, sure, looks so stupid. Like, oh my God, they made investments in SPACs. SPACs went bust. Oh my God, they're so stupid. But people just didn't look beneath the surface layer. And I think that's the general problem with investing in Palantir in general. Like a lot of people just disregarded Palantir as it's a black box. I can't understand it. Who cares? And well, the people who did care and who did take the time to look beneath the surface level, well, they're probably made a lot of money by now, as we're trading close to all-time highs. So chances are you made money in Palantir.
All right. This was fun. Last question for you, Amir. By the way, if you guys have not followed Amir already, Twitter, YouTube, all in the description. Please make sure to follow him, check him out. Mainly Palantir content, but as he's growing as a creator, he will diversify and talk about a ton of other stuff. He had a lot of PayPal content earlier this year, Seeking Alpha articles that went viral. So I really trust his investing prospectus and mindset and philosophy. Last question for you, Amir. What is your future entail? You've got a daughter, you've got this YouTube stuff, you have a job, you're living in Sweden. I mean, like, do you have any kind of big goals or ambitions that you want to scale over the next decade?
Man, you should have prepared me for this. That's hard.
I mean, it could be
My
a go ahead.
my short-term goal is to move to Japan. Basically,
Yeah.
my
So
wife is
why do
Japanese, so
okay, why do you want to move? Yeah, go ahead.
uh basically I don't want to turn this, you know,
No, we need to
boring or
humanize you. We need to
brutal.
humanize the robot. So go ahead. Go. Come on.
Am I really a robot? I think I'm a funny guy, you know. No, but basically, my wife moved to Sweden 8 years ago, and we now have a daughter together. And my family isn't really large. Like, I don't have basically any cousins. Like, I have an older and a younger sibling. They don't have any kids. So for my daughter, like, to really experience like traditional stuff, like, I didn't really experience like family gatherings at Christmas and stuff like that. And I want my daughter to have that, like the whole cultural stuff.
Right.
And in Japan, on my wife's side, they have a lot of children the same age, and I think the upbringing there will like really be better than currently, because Sweden is really turning unsafe, unfortunately. The Sweden that I grew up in was the safest country in the world, and that is no longer the case if you look at statistics. I think what's happening in Europe in general is very unfortunate in regards to the crime rates going up. And I think just Japan will be a better upbringing. She will be able to experience all this cultural stuff, which I want that for her. I don't want her to have like, sure, we can make it great, just me and my wife and my daughter, but it would be a lot better, like to have all these social stuff, all these traditions and stuff. So yeah, that's the reason basically. And I have one last thing I want to end on after, but if you have any follow-up questions, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's I love that because the amount of pictures I get of your daughter doing the cutest things. I mean, you obviously love this kid a lot.
I'm gonna say that I'm sure a lot of parents can relate. I don't really like kids in general, you know. Growing up, I never found like kids are cute. Like, no, never. Like, I just found them annoying. And I used to have friends like that got children before me. They would like post it all over social media constantly. I'm like, come on, man, I want to see your kid for the 10th time today. And then you get your own, and you're like, you meet someone at the like convenience store. You're like, I think this stranger wants to see a picture of my daughter eating ice cream, probably, you know. Like,
Yeah.
like something just turns in your brain, like people want to see this cuteness, and then you just, you know,
Well, she's
I
really dude. Some parents don't have the cutest kids. You are one of those parents that has one of the cutest kids ever. It's just that simple.
yeah, luckily she took after the mother, so that's great.
I love it.
I have this last thing. So I made a post on X yesterday. I found Celsius on clearance. Did you see that post?
I think so. Yeah.
So
You
they
tried
were
it
on
for the first
clear.
time.
I'm about to do it now.
Oh, you're about to
I
do it
said
on. Oh, wow, we get the exclusive. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I got so many comments like, "Oh, it tastes like piss," or "It's the best thing ever," and "You should try this one first. You should try that one. You should get this flavor." And people, like, the stock has been like volatile for a while. People were so hype about Celsius stock; it was just going to the moon. Then it crashed like 50%, and I don't even know what's happening now because I don't track it. But I know that a lot of people care about Celsius, so I found it at clearance, which to me is not a good sign. Like, you don't want to, when Prime came to
Yeah.
Sweden, it was like $12. Now they're like trying to offer them up for like 50 cents. Like, please buy this inventory. No one wants Prime. So whenever I see clearances like with Celsius, then it's a warning sign. But I'm gonna try it. This one is the flavor that I picked up. Some
So
people said that this is the best one, mango passion. So you
I've
ready for
never
the
been
AS?
I've never been a Celsius fan at all. But
You
there
try
are
it?
people that love it. I've tried it. I don't like it. It's polarizing. Some people hate it. Some people love it. So I'm very curious how you will taste it right here.
Okay,
All
you
right,
ready
this is
for the
exclusive.
AS,
I love it.
ASMR?
ASMR. There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Take a
try it.
nice big gulp. A big one.
I mean, Oh, you know what the issue is? I can tell this immediately. This is the kind of drink that doesn't suit your thirst. This like dries out your throat. I can tell immediately this type of. I can't
I
see
don't
myself
know
like.
how people are obsessed with this drink, dude. I don't get it. I just
But
don't
do you
get
know
it.
what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
drink this,
100%. I
but
know
it like dries out your throat. I can tell immediately. Like the taste is fine. Like I mean, tastes like mango and passion fruit. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But it's the type of drink that dries your throat out, and I can tell immediately. Like I wouldn't imagine myself drinking this like a lot. But I mean, it's
Wait,
fine.
have you
Taste
drank
is
Red
fine.
Bull and Monster and drank those?
Yeah. Monster tastes like soap. I've only tried the green one, and people say that it's the worst one. So I probably should give Monster a try. I love Red Bull, so
So that's
yeah.
my thing. If I compare Celsius to Red Bull because it's an energy drink, Red Bull is like in a different league.
And want to know a fun fact? I don't know if you have this company, but in Sweden, Celsius has been around for a long time, and they have a competitor called Nocco, Nocco. Nocco is dominating Swedish markets. Like Celsius has, like they're not even close, and it's basically like similar drink. Like cans look the same, a lot of different flavor profiles. So Nocco is really beating Celsius in Sweden. So let's keep an eye out. But this is why I don't want to buy consumer facing businesses. Like whenever like your favorite celebrity starts endorsing some other product, like you're just gonna
Yeah.
dip on Celsius. Like it's too
But
big
it,
for risk
it
for
depends
me.
on the brand though, because Apple's consumer, right? But Apple's Apple. Apple's obviously not.
No, it's a whole ecosystem. It's more towards the exploitative side of things, you know.
Right.
Not quite oppressive as a mafia, but you can make arguments. Like obviously, I invest in PayPal. PayPal doesn't have the risk of consumer trend shifting because they just care that you spend money. They don't care where you spend it, you know, as they power around a fourth of all online transactions. You just care that they spend. So that's like the gray zone for me. Like beyond that, I'm not really interested. The same with Tesla. Tesla does have the same consumer risk, but if you look at like how they solved manufacturing the way no one else did, how they're expanding into various verticals that are oppressive in nature, then you can like, it's not like my investment philosophy is set in stone. Like obviously there are some exceptions, but like just a drink, I mean, in my head they come and go and it's fine, like it tastes fine, but yeah, it's the kind of drink that dries out your throat, and I'm not really a big fan of that. I'm sure people that listen to this can relate to what I'm describing.
All right. There it is. Updated pod. Took a year to get here, but we are here with the new creator, Amir. All of his links in the description. You guys can check him out. Amir, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Amit. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
See you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.